When you've lived long enough, you begin to notice something rather strange about people. Some will appreciate your kindness. Others will quietly take advantage of it. And the heartbreaking part is, it often takes us years to recognize the difference. When I was younger, I believed that every misunderstanding had a solution. If someone became upset with me, I thought perhaps I hadn't explained myself clearly enough. If someone questioned my intentions, I searched for better words. If someone treated me unfairly, I assumed that, with enough patience, they would eventually understand who I really was. How wrong I was. Not because kindness is wrong. Kindness is one of the most beautiful gifts we can offer another human being. But kindness without wisdom can slowly become permission for people to keep hurting us. There was a neighbor I once knew. Let's call him David. First, he seemed pleasant. Whenever he needed help moving furniture, fixing something around the house, or simply wanted company, I gladly lent a hand. Every single time he thanked me with a smile. But something changed. Little by little, his requests became expectations. If I wasn't available immediately, he'd complain. If I said I was busy, he'd make me feel guilty. Before I realized what was happening, I had stopped helping because I wanted to. I was helping because I was afraid of disappointing him. Have you ever experienced something like that? Maybe not with a neighbor. Perhaps it was a family member, a friend, or even someone you worked beside for years. First, you're simply trying to be a good person. Then one day you wake up feeling emotionally exhausted, yet you can't quite explain why. That's because constant people-pleasing doesn't drain your body first. It drains your spirit. The older I've become, the more I've realized that many people aren't waiting for an explanation. They're watching to see how much of yourself you're willing to give away. Every time we apologize for things that aren't our fault, every time we ignore our own feelings just to keep someone else comfortable, every time we accept behavior that quietly hurts us, we're teaching people what they can expect from us. Not with our words but with our actions. Here's the painful truth I wish someone had told me much earlier in life. Some people don't continue crossing your boundaries because they hate you. They continue because nothing has ever shown them they need to stop. That realization changed my life. I finally understood something incredibly simple. Respect isn't built through endless explanations. It's built through quiet consistency, through the standards we choose, through the limits we calmly protect. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with quiet self-respect. And yet, knowing this is only the beginning. Because there's one mistake almost all of us make when we first begin protecting our peace. A mistake that quietly pulls us back into the same exhausting cycle. One of the greatest lessons life has ever taught me is that not every problem deserves my attention. For years, I believed every criticism needed an answer. Every misunderstanding needed an explanation. Every disagreement needed to be resolved. But the older I became, the more I realized that some conversations were never meant to bring peace. They were meant to keep me trapped. There are people who don't ask questions because they want to understand you. They ask questions because they want to challenge you. They aren't looking for clarity. They're looking for control. I remember sitting across from an old friend one afternoon. As we talked about life, he smiled and asked me a question I had never really considered. He said, "Why do you always seem so calm these days?" For a moment I didn't know how to answer. Then it became clear. It wasn't because my life had become easier. I still faced disappointment. I still experienced loss. I still met difficult people. The difference was that I had stopped giving every difficult person permission to disturb my peace. That changed everything. Years ago, every negative opinion stayed in my mind for days. I replayed conversations over and over again. I wondered if I should have explained myself differently. I searched for the perfect words that might finally make someone understand me. But eventually I discovered something freeing. Some people have already decided who they believe you are. No amount of explaining will change their minds. And once you accept that truth, an incredible weight begins to disappear. You stop carrying responsibilities that were never yours. You stop trying to win arguments that have no finish line. You stop allowing other people's opinions to decide whether you have a good day or a bad one. One of the hardest things to learn is that silence isn't weakness. Sometimes silence is wisdom. It doesn't mean you've given up. It means you've recognized that your peace is worth more than another exhausting argument. Think about how much energy we lose trying to convince people who have already stopped listening. Hours become days. Days become years. And before we know it, we've sacrificed precious moments of our lives trying to earn approval from people who were never willing to give it. Life is simply too short for that. Protecting your peace doesn't require anger. It doesn't require revenge. It doesn't even require the last word. Sometimes the strongest response is choosing not to continue a conversation that is leading nowhere. That simple decision can change the direction of your life. Because once you stop reacting to every criticism, you begin to notice something surprising. The people who truly care about you remain. The people who only wanted your reaction slowly lose their influence. And that's when you begin to see who truly deserves a place in your life. But protecting your peace creates another unexpected challenge. Because the moment you begin changing your behavior, some people begin changing theirs as well. One thing I've learned after many years is this: the moment you begin respecting yourself, not everyone will be happy about it. First, that confused me. I thought becoming calmer and wiser would improve every relationship in my life. Instead, a few relationships became more difficult. People who had never questioned my kindness suddenly questioned my boundaries. People who had always expected my time suddenly became upset when I wasn't always available. For a while, I wondered if I was doing something wrong. Then an elderly friend shared a piece of wisdom I'll never forget. He said, "The people who truly love you will adjust to your boundaries. The people who benefited from your lack of boundaries will resist them." Those words changed the way I looked at relationships forever. Think about it for a moment. When you begin saying no to unreasonable demands, who becomes angry? Usually, it isn't the people who respect you. It's the people who expected unlimited access to your time, your energy, and your kindness. I once met a woman named Eleanor. She had recently lost her husband after nearly 50 years of marriage. Like many people, she expected family and friends to gather around her during the hardest season of her life. Some did. Many didn't. At first, she spent months waiting for people to call. She wondered why they had become so distant. She blamed herself. She thought perhaps she had done something wrong. Then one quiet morning, she made a decision that changed everything. Instead of focusing on the people who had walked away, she began appreciating the people who stayed. She stopped chasing attention. She stopped forcing conversations. She stopped trying to keep relationships alive all by herself. And something beautiful happened. The friendships that remained became stronger. The conversations became more meaningful. The loneliness that once felt unbearable slowly began to fade. She once told me something I'll never forget. She said, "I stopped counting how many people were in my life. I started paying attention to who brought peace into it." That simple change transformed the way she lived. As we grow older, we begin to realize that life isn't about collecting more people. It's about surrounding ourselves with the right people. The ones who respect us. The ones who listen. The ones who don't make us feel guilty for protecting our own well-being. Not every relationship is meant to last forever. Some people are only part of one chapter of our lives. And that's okay. Holding on to every relationship, no matter how unhealthy it becomes, only makes it harder to welcome the healthy ones that are waiting ahead. Sometimes the greatest act of wisdom isn't learning who to hold on to. It's learning who to let go of without anger, without resentment, and without guilt. Because every time you protect your peace, you're making room for something better. But there was still one obstacle I had to overcome. And surprisingly, it wasn't other people. It was the guilt I carried inside myself. There was one obstacle that stayed with me longer than any difficult person ever did. It wasn't their words. It wasn't their behavior. It was my own guilt. For the longest time, every time I said no, I felt as though I had done something wrong. I worried that I had disappointed someone. I worried they would think I had changed. Most of all, I worried that protecting myself somehow made me a selfish person. Looking back now, I realize how many kind people carry that same burden. We find it easy to care for everyone else. But when it comes to caring for ourselves, we hesitate. We apologize. We question our decisions. We feel guilty for needing rest. I once knew a woman named Margaret. She was one of the most generous people I had ever met. Whenever someone needed help, she was there. If a neighbor was sick, she cooked meals. If a friend needed a ride, she offered without hesitation. If a family member asked for a favor, she rarely refused. Everyone admired her kindness, but very few people noticed something else. She was always exhausted, not because she worked too hard, because she carried everyone's problems as if they were her own. One afternoon I asked her a simple question. When was the last time you did something just for yourself? She smiled for a moment. Then her smile slowly disappeared. I honestly don't remember, she said. That answer stayed with me, because I realized there are many people who spend so much time taking care of others that they slowly forget how to take care of themselves. They become so busy keeping everyone else comfortable that they no longer recognize their own needs. Life taught me something important through Margaret. Kindness should never require self-sacrifice. Helping people is a beautiful thing. Loving people is a beautiful thing. Forgiving people is a beautiful thing. But none of those things should come at the cost of losing yourself. Think of a candle. A candle gives warmth and light to everyone around it. But if the flame is never protected, eventually it burns out. The same thing happens to us. If we keep giving without resting, listening without being heard, loving without being appreciated, one day we wake up emotionally empty. Not because we have nothing left to give, but because we've forgotten to care for the person who has been giving all along. That's why I've learned that saying no isn't selfish. Sometimes it's the healthiest word we'll ever say. It protects our energy, protects our peace, and in many cases it even protects the relationships that truly matter. The people who genuinely love you won't stop loving you because you set a healthy boundary. In fact, they'll often respect you even more. The ones who become angry are usually the ones who benefited from having no boundaries at all. That realization changed the way I looked at every relationship in my life. But there was still one final lesson waiting for me. A lesson that took nearly a lifetime to understand. Because true freedom doesn't begin when difficult people change. It begins the moment you stop needing them to change at all. As I look back on my life now, one truth stands above all the others. The greatest victory was never proving someone else wrong. It was finally learning how to protect my own peace. When I was younger, I believed respect had to be earned. I thought that if I explained myself well enough, if I worked hard enough, if I gave enough, people would eventually appreciate me. Some did, but many never would. And that had nothing to do with me. It took me many years to understand that not everyone is capable of giving the respect they're asking from others. Some people carry so much anger, so much disappointment, or so much unhappiness, that they cannot recognize kindness no matter how much of it you offer. For a long time, I thought it was my responsibility to change them. Now I know better. The only person I can truly change is myself. That realization lifted a weight from my shoulders that I had carried for decades. I stopped worrying about opinions I couldn't control. I stopped trying to repair relationships that only one person was willing to save. And most importantly, I stopped measuring my worth by how other people treated me. Instead, I began measuring my life by something much simpler. Did I go to bed with a peaceful heart? Did I treat others with kindness without losing myself? Did I spend my time with people who genuinely cared about me? If the answer was yes, then it had been a good day. I once met an elderly gentleman named Samuel. He had experienced more loss than most people could imagine. He had buried his wife. He had said goodbye to lifelong friends. He had faced illness more than once. Yet every morning he greeted everyone with the same gentle smile. One day I finally asked him, "Samuel, after everything you've been through, how do you still seem so peaceful?" He smiled for a moment before answering. Then he quietly said, "I stopped asking life to be fair. I simply became grateful that I was still here to live it." Those words have stayed with me ever since. Because gratitude doesn't erase pain. It doesn't pretend difficult memories never happened. It simply reminds us that even after loss, life still offers beautiful moments worth noticing. A sunrise, a warm cup of tea, a conversation with an old friend, the laughter of a grandchild, a quiet afternoon with no worries at all. These moments may seem small, but together, they become a beautiful life. So if I could leave you with just one piece of advice today, it would be this. Never spend your precious years trying to convince people to respect you. The people who truly value you already do. And those who don't will rarely change because of one more explanation. Protect your peace. Protect your heart. Protect your time. Because they are among the few things in life that become more valuable with every passing year. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If this message touched your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until we meet again, take good care of yourself. And always remember, the strongest person in the room is often the one who no longer feels the need to prove anything to anyone. If today's story touched your heart, I hope you'll carry one lesson with you. Protect your peace, treasure your time, and never forget your own worth. If you enjoy these quiet conversations about life, wisdom, and growing older with grace, I'd be honored to have you join our Aging Wisely family. Please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, take good care of yourself.